Hey guys, welcome back. So for today's video, I'm going to be showing you guys my routine of how I cover up my dark circles effectively and how I keep them from creasing. Because while I do have really bad under eye dark circles, I have really bad creasing as well. So it's definitely a bad combination and it can be a little rough because full coverage concealers will cover up my dark circles, but then they'll crease really bad. But then maybe something more like coverage and minimal won't crease as badly, but it won't cover up my dark circles. So it's definitely a process finding a concealer that works really well to cover everything while still avoiding that creasing. And I'm going to show you guys what I do because I think it's more about the way you do it than the concealer that you use. Obviously, it's definitely important to use a good concealer, and if you have under eye circles, you're going to need to use something a little bit more full coverage if you want them covered up. So we're just going to get straight into it. But before we do, subscribe down below if you're new. I would love to have you join the family. Also give this video a thumbs up if you enjoy it or you learned anything new from it. I would also really love for you guys to come follow me on Instagram and Twitter. They will be linked in the description box. And let's just get started. LaCroix Cran Raspberry Sparkling Water is my jam right now. I feel like I'm going to drink so much of this, and I just got it last night. So I'm going to zoom you guys in a little bit more so that hopefully we can see a little bit more what's going on. Okay, so I don't know if you guys can tell really well on camera, but I do have pretty bad under eye circles. I put on my other face makeup, so the rest of my makeup is done. Obviously, I haven't done like bronzer and blush and stuff. I just did like my base, and then I'm going to go ahead and go in with concealer right now. But like I said, if it does show up on camera, I do have pretty bad dark circles. And even like my eyelids have a lot of darkness on them. I feel like the lash extensions kind of help to cover that up a little bit more. So that's kind of a nice thing. I don't have to do as much with my eyelids, but still have to put concealer on my under eye. So the concealer I'm using today is the e.l.f. 16-Hour Camo Concealer. Now, obviously, you can use whatever concealer you have or whatever concealer works for you. I think, like I said, this is more about how you're doing it versus the concealer that you're using. You want to make sure that you have obviously clean skin and your under eyes are clean and moisturized. And I think that's really important, kind of along with the rest of your face. You just want to make sure that your skin is properly prepped. Even if you don't have a primer on, just make sure that area is moisturized. So first thing I'm going to do is just go in on one eye. I'm going to do one eye at a time. You don't have to do this. I just do it specifically with this concealer because it dries pretty quickly and I want to make sure that I get everything blended out before it starts to dry. And this is a full coverage concealer. I just feel like it works best this way. It's really hard for me to do this on camera because I really have to like look down in my mirror when I'm doing everything, but I'm going to try my best. I just start applying a small amount. This is like a pretty full coverage concealer, so a little does go a long way and I don't want to overdo it. I'm going to blend this out with my sponge. This is just the e.l.f. sponge. It's like the angled one. It's shaped like the Real Techniques one, which I also have here, and I'm going to show you guys how I use that in a second. But I'm just going to blend this out. And the thing here is, if you're doing other stuff, after you blend out your concealer, you always want to make sure you go back and blend again, because if you don't blend out the concealer and then immediately apply powder, it does give more chance of creasing. I would definitely recommend making sure your concealer is completely blended out and there's no creasing starting when you apply the powder. So I do like to make sure it's blended out and sheared out a little bit, because even though I do want it covered, I don't want to do super full cakey coverage because that's not what's going on the rest of my face right now even. But sometimes I will go in and apply just a teeny bit more right in that area there, right there where I get the most darkness, and I'll just go over that. But you want to make sure it's completely blended out before you go in with the second layer, just to avoid any kind of caking up or anything. Now we're going to grab some powder. You can use any powder that you want. I find that a loose powder does work really well with this because it's almost like baking, but you don't even have to let it sit and bake. You just can pack it under there and then wipe it away right away or blend it in right away, and it works amazing, and it really sets that down and keeps it from creasing. But on an everyday basis, I don't use a loose powder. I usually will just use a pressed powder because it's so much easier for me. But I am going to show you guys what I do with a loose powder anyways, just because I want to show you guys how I would do it if I was like going on a night out. I want to make sure it's like perfect and going to stay all night long. So let me grab my loose powder. Okay, so the powder I have is the RCMA No Color powder. This powder is absolutely amazing for no flashback and no creasing at all. It's amazing. And then I'm going to take my Real Technique sponge, and I love the texture of this for setting under the eyes with powder. I think this is one of the most important steps, is setting your under eyes with a sponge. And the Real Technique sponge, in my personal opinion, is the best. This is the perfect texture for setting the under eyes with powder. I just think it's a little bit more dense than some of the other sponges you can get at the drugstore, even more dense than the Beauty Blender, and it just has smaller pores, if that makes sense. So it just really works really well to pack that powder on there, and it doesn't look cakey or anything. It looks actually really smooth and beautiful, but I'm going to show you guys what I do. Just going back in one more time a little bit to make sure there's no creasing there, and then I will go on the top there because there's a bunch of powder on the top, and I'm just going to pack a bunch onto my blender, and then I'm going to look down in the mirror. Hopefully you guys can see what I'm doing on camera. I'm just packing that powder on there right after I've blended out the concealer, and obviously that just kind of blends away into the skin, so it's not like you're baking or anything like that. This eye is still completely undone, so you can definitely see the difference. I don't want to apply too much powder because I know some people do have really dry skin. I don't personally suffer with that, so it's not a big deal if I apply a decent amount of powder, but I don't want to apply too much just because I don't want it to get crusty. And then I'll go in with the other side and just tap over that to blend it out. So I'm sure that you guys can see the difference right there. I'm telling you guys, this really is what works the best for me to keep my concealer from creasing all day long. Just the difference that it makes with the circles, and this really does work the best. This is what I do when I am really trying to keep my under eyes from creasing, and I'm like, you know, really taking that extra step and that extra time. Hopefully this video isn't getting too long, but I really wanted to show you guys in depth what I do. And I don't know if I mentioned this when I was blending out the concealer. I think I might have. But you really want to make sure you're blending that out kind of into a thin layer. You can always add a little bit more if you want to, like I did. But if you're just applying so much concealer, like tons of it under your eyes, and then blending it out, your sponge or brush or whatever you're using cannot soak up all of that product, and you're going to have so much product under there that even though you go over top with the powder and you're packing it on, it's just going to crease easier. I've had experience with this. I know that the more concealer you use, the easier it's going to crease because it's just inevitable. You're applying so much product under there that it can't blend out evenly and be smooth. It has to just kind of clump up and cake after a while because it has to have somewhere to go, if that makes any sense. But I'm just going to do the other eye now. I'm going to do this one a little bit quicker to show you guys what I do one more time. Now this is my really creasy side. This is the eye that creases the worst out of the two. So I sometimes go in and just do a little extra blending with this one, but obviously everyone's eyes are going to be different. I'm going to go in with the other side of the sponge and just pat over that to blend. And I will be 100% honest with you guys. I noticed that when I do this specifically with the loose powder, there is a little bit more noticeable, I don't know how to describe it, not wrinkling under the eyes, but just like you can see how my natural skin looks, if that makes any sense. It doesn't create as much of a perfect, smooth, flawless look that I do notice with the pressed powder. I notice that more. I don't know what it is. I don't know why. But the reason I do this is just because, to me, it's not as noticeable and it's better than creasing. And, you know, everybody's going to have different opinions. Maybe that, you know, wrinkliness that I notice is just a little bit of dryness from the powder. But personally, like I said, it's not as noticeable, especially from a distance. And to me, it's not as bad as creasing. When my under eyes crease, it is not cute. And it's really bad because I have such deep creases. So I don't mind a little bit more dryness under there. It's just not, to me, it's not as big of a deal really as super bad creasing. But I can do this with a pressed powder and it works really great as well. Maybe just doesn't last as long. And again, going with that whole like smooth, perfected look under the eyes, you will get that if you apply a lot of concealer and just set your concealer with a brush, you know, and some powder really quickly. You will get that smooth look at first, but I promise you, if you have any type of creasy under eyes at all, it will be completely different within an hour or two. That's my experience. I'm sure there are a lot of other people who had that experience as well. And if you clicked on this video, you probably want to know how to avoid creasing. Another thing that I also like to avoid, just really quickly, I would like to mention is a setting spray. I know that sounds crazy. A lot of you guys really love setting spray and I totally get that. But if you do have really bad creasing under your eyes and you're wanting to avoid that, I would recommend holding your hands over your eyes, completely covering them, or some kind of like a palette or something to make sure that you're not getting any setting spray under your eyes, because that makes a big difference. I haven't had a ton of experience with matte setting sprays, but anything else at all, I have definitely had bad luck with when I am spraying a setting spray on my face and it gets on my under eyes, because when I add that moisture back in, it's getting rid of that whole process that I did. I just set it with a powder and I just made sure there's not going to be any creasing, and now I'm going back in with something moist. Maybe that's not your experience, like I said, if you don't have really bad creasing under your eyes, but I will either hold my hands over my eyes or I will apply some setting spray before I do my concealer and powder underneath my eyes, just to kind of melt the foundation into the face and make sure it's looking really good. And then I'll go over top with concealer and set my under eyes, just because I don't really set the rest of my face anyway, so it doesn't really make that big of a difference if I'm waiting till after I do my concealer. That's just my experience personally. But anyways, I'm going to stop rambling. I know this is going to be a really long video, so I'm so sorry, but I really hope that it was helpful for you guys. If I missed anything or forgot to mention anything, I'll leave it down below in the comments and pin that comment so you guys will be able to see it for sure. So that's what I do. That's it for my video. I'm going to go finish the rest of my makeup now because I'm looking a little flat. I really hope that you guys enjoyed this. Like I said, I really hope it was helpful. Don't forget to subscribe if you are new and give this video a thumbs up. I love you guys so much, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.